one. Hey, howdy, hey, everybody. You just came in the middle of our 3, 2, 1 clap. We're having a fun time here. I'm Noah, and my friend here is Taylor, and Tiger Ice 45, you didn't catch the silver chair, the 1990 BBC series?
What can
How
I
did that
say?
happen?
What can I say? I didn't know BBC existed until an ex introduced me to Doctor Who. So,
You weren't just sitting down glued to your like black and white Yorkshire television in
nope.
the small lamb populated village where you grew up in North Derbyshire?
I didn't get any of that reference. Anyways, no. What? I'm so confused.
Ah, man. You know, The Silver Chair, the 1990 adaptation of the 1953 book by C.S. Lewis, one of the last books, chronologically speaking and publishing-wise, released in the Chronicles of Narnia series. It's excellent. It's solid. It sort of wraps up the first sort of what it's like the end of the first like run through of the series that he did. After that, he like left back in time to like make The Magician's Nephew and The Horse and His Boy, and then he did The Last Battle that I don't think anybody really read. Uh,
I mean, I've only read The Magician's Nephew and then the first of the four siblings books, so
it's a
that's
fun
what I got for
it's a
you.
fun time. As we'll get into, I have no doubt. I was raised in a Christian family, so Narnia was a part of my media diet. Reading the books, or having my dad read them to me, watching the old BBC movies on DVD, or watching the new Disney ones. Except for we really just watched the first one, and then the other two came out,
You
and
you
they happened.
you want to know the discussions my family had about Narnia?
Oh
So,
heavens!
I come from a multi-religious household where everyone basically has a different religious belief. Most of them are different branches of Christianity, but my mom was an atheist. My stepfather was, I think he's Catholic. He's
Hmm.
along the Christian route. He claims to be something, but he doesn't really worship inside the house. Um, and my aunt's a Wiccan. Her husband's a spiritualist. And one of my mom's best friends, who basically was an uncle to me growing up, is Jewish. And their discussion on Narnia, the ones who participated, was how, yeah, it's supposed to be Christian, but there's a lot of pagan influences that prove it's not a very good Christian story. That's what they all settled on. Anything else started fights. We were here to watch the fawns and the satyrs and the magical talking creatures. We didn't give a fuck about the four kids or Aslan. The witch was kind of cool, but we were here for the magical creatures.
The concept of paganism, something that has nothing to do with Christianity.
I didn't say
Well,
we were accurate at the time. Listen, I was like 8. I wasn't here to correct them.
So, for those of you who are also in the dark, the Silverchair miniseries and the book both follow the story of Eustace Scrubb and Jill Pole, two humans from 1950s era England. Eustace Scrubb, for those of you that maybe saw the first movie, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and then sort of nothing else, because that's probably the biggest Narnia ever was, the first big Disney movie.
Yeah.
Outside of Christian fantasy
To
book
be
reading
fair, yeah.
circles. Uh, I guess people read Narnia outside the context of Christian books specifically, but that's where Lewis's home turf is. Anyway, it's several books down the line. At this point, all the Pevensies have been told by Aslan that you can't stay in Narnia anymore. You got to get out. It's enough adventures for you. This one is the second adventure for Eustace, who was aboard the Dawn Treader in the last Pevensey adventure. He's the cousin of the four Pevensies. I guess that's why he got wrapped up in the starting incident of Dawn Treader. Suffice to say, he's a different person now. He's no longer a massive jerk, the person he was at the start of Dawn Treader, and he's no longer as much of a massive jerk. Anyway, the series opens at boarding school where he and another student that gets bullied a lot named Jill Pole is running from a pack of raging, super violent bullies that are running around in this boarding school. They both go hiding. They're on a run. He tells her about the weird adventure he had and how he got to Narnia, and there's this magic line named Aslan, and she's like, well, that sounds weird. You seem weird, but also different. So I guess something must have happened to you. Anyway, they stumble onto Narnia, as one happens to do. And they get sent on an adventure by Aslan, who like gives them a list of like, here's you do this, and then you do this, and then you do this, and tells them you better follow that list, otherwise this adventure is going to go pretty screwy. So they don't follow that list, and the adventure goes pretty screwy. There are what owls and giants and an underworld and a green lady that's also a snake, and in the end they meet a prince and also a chair. And along the way, hey, there's something called a marshwiggle named Puddleglum, who's the best character.
Best character! He's Tom Baker! It's Tom Baker, best character! Okay, so, like, we were on the loading screen before he started the disc, and all I got was a slight glimpse of his face. I'm like, I fucking know that guy. Who the fuck is it? We get the Glum Puddles introduction, and it's just Tom Baker! I fucking love Tom Baker. I love him. Puddleglum. Yes. Anyways, best character until he got on the soapbox, but...
It's the most My Little Pony name ever. Puddleglum.
My Little Pony had to get their naming conventions from somewhere.
It was specifically from Puddleglum the Marshwiggle.
Man, I don't know My Little Pony as well as I know Care Bears, and I know Care Bears really well. Don't judge me, don't ask why. Point of the matter is, if I did, I could probably name a pony that actually fit Puddleglum. Puddleglum.
Puddleglum.
Yeah, I could probably name a pony that fits him, but all I could think is he's a mix of the fucking Grouchy Bear from Care Bears and like Sunshine Bear with just a twist of Wish Bear in there. That's exactly what the fuck
Aren't
he
we
is. I always saw myself personally as a Tenderheart, but fine.
Taylor.
Oh god. Yeah.
Tigerized 45.
Yeah.
My co-host.
Yes.
Newbie of the episode. Friend my friend. Person I dragged through this movie that I haven't watched in years since I was a child. That I didn't know was 3 hours long, but is apparently 3 hours long, and I just had that kind of patience as a kid.
Yeah, yeah.
What were your thoughts?
Well, right off the bat, I was thinking, oh, the effects they use in this movie are just like those in the fairy documentary. And I actually made a comment on that at the beginning of it, because it looks like the beginning of the fairy documentary that tried to prove fairies existed, but ended up doing the opposite of that. I can't remember what it was called. My aunt was really into that.
I need to see this. I have not heard about this.
Oh god, Dragonheart, all of that. Oh, that was my childhood. Fuck.
Oh, tasty. Tasty.
But it's a lot of like the same effects. It looks really decent for how old it is given. But
though?
I think it does. I mean, if you look at a movie kind of around the same age as it, there are definitely worse effects that it could have used at the time. It holds up relatively well compared to other movies that came out during that time. I think it came out before Dragonheart, and Dragonheart's, like, the first movie's effects don't hold up as well as it. I will give the movie that. Not all of its effects are good, its green screens are shit, but the disappearing lion is also shit, but the side stuff they do with the giants... That was well done. That was really well done. I will give them that.
It really holds up. The Land of the Giants effects, especially.
Yes.
Like they're getting all their matte shots correctly. I'm not sure if they're like composite shooting, matte editing. What really got me is the lighting is always so on point in all of those like giant scenes, and that's really what I think sells it. On top of that being where they put all their green screen budget, I think, whenever they have to use it, or they realize, no, we can't use a green screen. Our green screen is terrible. Let's put them on weird combinatory sets with giant props. It looks excellent in the giant scenes. That all is conveyed really well. It gets the idea across, and it keeps you from losing investment in the plausible deniability of it all.
I
And
mean,
what more can an effect be asked to do?
you're right. That does work well. I personally didn't focus much on the lighting. I didn't think about it. If it's not being used for symbolism, I'm probably not noticing lighting. When lighting catches my eye, it's because, oh, it's symbolic of like stuff that isn't being directly said. And if it's not that, I don't think about it actively at all.
It seemed quite naturalistic to me.
But it looked good. I will agree that it looked good on the Giants' end. Puddleglum was amazing. I mean, we could talk about Puddleglum for an hour and a half. I would be down for that and avoid like the central theme of the whole movie.
I mean, wanna like start with the place where we were for most of the movie, where we were all on board the Puddleglum train, and then we'll get to that in the last bit. So I don't know, context. When they arrive with their mission, they find out, okay, what we're supposed to do is find this missing prince. That's what Aslan's advice was leading us towards.
Okay.
They go. Warwick Davis shows up as an owl,
Let's
takes them to some place, and they're like, "You'll need a guide."
Let's talk about the
Puddleglum.
dumbass prince for a second. The prince is a dumbass.
Oh yeah, let's start with the prince.
Such a dumbass.
Prince Rillian.
Listen, okay.
Son of Caspian.
So he sees his mom get bit by a snake and knows it must have been a powerful snake, or else she wouldn't have died so quickly. Then he goes to the exact place where she died, his mother. Repeatedly visits that said place. And meets a magical woman there, dressed in all green, the same shade of green as the snake, with a snake on her head. Oh, a fucking snake headdress. And what does he think? Oh, magical, gorgeous woman. She must be a princess. She must be, like, someone important. Or, I just want to get to know her. So he repeatedly visits the place where his mother died, without telling anyone. And they're all thinking, oh, he wants to find the snake. He wants to discover what it was and destroy it so it doesn't harm anyone else. So an advisor follows him against his will so he doesn't get killed by the same snake that killed his mom. And instead, what does he do? Oh, he's actually romancing a woman that can't be found in any other place but the one where his mother died, dressed head to toe in green snakeskin. Okay, the dress isn't snakeskin, but, like, it's green, snake headdress, like, what the fuck? And the advisor's like, yeah, the advisor's like, hey, this is horrible, stay away from her, maybe we should go. And he's like, you scared her off, damn you. And I'm just thinking, well, the advisor's right, because you're a dumbass. She is clearly the woman who killed... One, this was written by C.S. Lewis. The woman is the villain. Right away. You know that.
Oh, yeah.
Snake, everything. Snake killed his mom. Woman is the villain. She's a witch, clearly. Also, middle of the woods. Means she's a witch. Two. If your advisor's like, hey, this doesn't seem smart, and they were going to, like, give you credit for, I don't know, maybe trying to defeat the thing that killed your mom so it can't harm anyone else, and it turns out you're just going for some pussy, well, maybe you need to get your act together? Maybe you need to, like, find a different woman who isn't only at the place where your mother died? That seems like a weird connection, dude.
There seem like a lot of, like, perfectly fine Narnians wandering around out there. Find a nice...
God.
I don't know.
I don't care. I don't even care. Just not the woman who only appears to you in the place where your dead mother died.
I don't care. Centaur, satyr, a nice badger, somebody.
Anybody, anything, not that one. Literally not that one. Anybody else. Caspian probably wouldn't give a damn. I don't know. Yeah. I barely watched The Dawn Treader. I didn't finish that movie, but he seemed like he didn't care about much.
It was also one of my faves. It was my favorite book.
Not a big
religious Nephew was my favorite.
Not a big religious person, so I couldn't get through it.
I mean, I'm surprised that I can see why, like, after Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe, the religion would rub you the wrong way, because that's when it starts screaming. Everything else is just, like, parallel symbolism, at least in The Magician's Nephew.
Yeah, no, and that's why I read Magician's Nephew, and that's why I finished The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. That's why I didn't finish the next book or read any of the others. Because God, Aslan, is just...
You hate him.
I do. So, like, as a kid... Now, listen, as a kid, I really liked Aslan. I'm like, talking lion, and he's God. This is great. I wish I was in Narnia, where God had a physical form. And it was a fucking lion. That's so cool. Then I'm a teenager watching those movies like, hey, he knew that woman was going to try and steal the teenage boy, and yet didn't warn anyone. And didn't tell anyone else what was going on. And then shamed the kid for following the grown woman. Oh no. Now I'm an adult and I'm just like, shut the fuck up. Just shut the fuck up. Just shut the fuck up. And I'm like that the entire time Aslan appears, every single instance in this movie. Because one, the task he gives... they're just busy work. They are just busy work. He knows where the prince is. He could just tell someone. There is no need. People talk about the fucking people talk about the plot holes in like Lord of the Rings and the Eagles and all the other shit that could have made the journey shorter. Literally, Aslan, tell somebody where the prince is directly, send an adult that can fight, and go. There you go. Problem solved. What the fuck?
Allegory. But the allegory, Taylor.
If your allegory can be cut to like a fourth of what your journey is, maybe you need a better call to action. Then God told you. Then God told you. I get the allegory.
God told them to go on a mission.
I understand that. What I'm saying is, God didn't need to send children. God didn't need to give them 4 tasks they had to remember and follow to a T. But then they just accidentally follow them anyways while breaking half of each and still getting to where they needed to go. Like, they still got there. They still did the whole journey. They still did every, like, main part of each task, even if it didn't go the way they thought they would go, because, hey, that's how a hero's journey works. Even when something looks like it goes wrong, it's typically going right. That's the point. But, like...
Failing upward, or downward in this case.
Yeah, but, like... Oh, God, I thought...
You just have no patience for the Christian faith mumbo-jumbo.
I mean, I don't mind the Christian faith, and there are some shows that have, like, Christian allegories and Christian faith shit that affects it that I have patience for, and I can get over. Supernatural is one of them. I can get over that. I hate how they treat every other religion in that series, but I get where it's coming from. I can clearly see the Christian influences. I can swallow my fucking pill. But, like... This whole journey did not need to happen. Prince Caspian's like 70, 90 years old in this. I don't fucking know. He's old. He can barely walk. He's going on his last journey on a ship because he begins his journey on a ship, so he's got to end it. At least, I think he began it on a ship. I don't remember how his introduction went. Point is, going on his last fucking sailing journey to try and find his son, who was a dumbass and followed a strange woman in the woods dressed in the same color as a snake. Literally, none of this needed to happen. The problem with, like, introducing God physically into your stories is that there's no reason for God not to just do the thing that needs to happen if he wants it to happen that way. There's, like, no reason for him not to, unless he's just an asshole who doesn't want to do it.
At the risk of getting into a theological debate, I mean, like you said, if this is how he wants it to pan out, that's how it's going to be. It's that whole ineffable business that was the core of Good Omens, you know?
Yeah, and I get that. But at the same time, God doesn't physically appear in Good Omens. God never makes a physical appearance. You get a voiceover in the show, but God never physically manifests. That's how you can make this work. If you have the physical appearance of God in your work, either they need to be an asshole or there needs to be reasons why there are limits to them and they can't go on the journey themselves. Or
Why do you
maybe,
think that? Why do you think that the
maybe have adults go on the journey and not children.
I mean, the children go on the journey because it's a children's book.
I get it.
That's solved.
I know, but like, God, it bugs me so much. I'm not here to get into a theological debate.
What is it about the physical manifestation of God that makes you feel like the his general ineffable nonsense has to change too?
Because when you have God physically manifesting in something, they're always going to come off as an asshole. Always.
Yeah.
Unless there are limits to their powers, they're always going to come off as an asshole. And if you're doing a work where you don't want, where the point is, hey, put your faith in God, they have your back, they will guide you down the right path, don't physically put a embodiment of God in, or else they're going to come off as an asshole to people who don't believe already. You're not convincing anyone when you put like the physical manifestation of God into a story and there's not limits on them and they could do anything they want and they don't just solve the problem themselves.
I mean, isn't that sort of like the core of the point? This relationship with this entity, like that you're kind of terrified of and has very big plans for you and you're not sure how you feel about it, but you better obey it?
I mean, yeah, but like fear, oh my god. Okay, you're just baiting me into the theological debate now. Why does fear have to be a main point in faith? Because if you look at most major religions, it is fear that keeps people in the faith. Okay? That's my biggest issue. That's not even my biggest issue. That's just one of them. I'm not a religious person, which is why I'm not trying to get into this right now. I'm a Gnostic for a fucking reason. I spent years trying to discover faith, and everybody tries to utilize fear to fucking control you once you're in faith, and it's bullshit. That's not how it should fucking work. Should it be based on fear? Your faith should not come from fear of the afterlife, or fear of what the wrongs you've done, or fear of karma coming back to get you in the ass. I hate that idea. I hate that idea.
And it definitely gets into it like very directly and specifically in this one, but it's sort of an interesting, it's kind of a novel angle. It's not fear of death. It's more like it approaches like from the baseline, hey, God exists, so how is your relationship going to be? Like in a very like this movie, you know the Lindsay Ellis joke that like some things are just oops all allegory. This is, you know, like all C.S. Lewis work, not even more, frankly, even more so than Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. Upon the rewatch, this is an oops all allegory story.
It's not oops. Oh my god.
Yeah, for sure, definitely got the you know, he sacrifices himself to save them, all the impure, the ones that have sinned. Like, yeah, good for Aslan. That's sort of like that's one distinguishes itself by having a lot of like really small vignettes and just especially at the start and the beginning that are central that are built on a core idea of the an analysis of faith specifically and how one ought to approach one's relationship with God if one has faith, and also the merit of having faith in general. And I figured we get into this later, but I guess we're just going to do this now and get to the particular like final scene at the end after we have our Stan discussion. Suffice it to say, there is an episode at the start. Jill has just arrived in Narnia. Eustace has fallen off a cliff for reasons that we'll probably get to. So she's alone. She's really, really thirsty. She finds a stream, but there's a big lion there, and she's like, shoot. Hey, if I'm going to drink here, she says, could you not eat me? And he's like, I'm not making that promise. And she's like, would you eat me? And he's like, I've eaten men, women, boys, girls. I've eaten everything. And she's like, shoot, so I just have to trust that you won't eat me. And he's like, yep. And then she drinks and is like, wow, the water's great. And it's a metaphor, you see. God
Listen,
could mess you up, but it's either deal with him or die.
it's so fucked up
Faith
that
can mess you up. It's either deal with it or
it's
die.
it's so fucked up that he tells that to a child who's just like, "Hey, if I don't drink, I might die of thirst, but I'm kind of terrified because you're a fucking man-eating lion. All I want is a promise that you aren't going to fucking kill me." But God can't give a promise like that, because if you are in the Christian faith, God has a hand in everybody's deaths, and he's always got a plan, and it's some bullshit or another. Sorry, not bullshit.
I was hoping this wouldn't turn into just trashing Christianity as a
I'm
whole,
not
just the specific like set of
I'm
debates
not
that C.S. Lewis brings up.
I'm not trashing Christianity as a whole. I'm not.
We're not that atheist podcast.
But it is fucked up that he says that to a child. It is fucked up that that is such an acceptable concept that, of course, it would be in a children's book. If children reading this understand that Aslan is God and Aslan can't make the promise to not kill you, it takes away a sense of security while they're reading. Because, hey, that's right, God can't... If you believe in God, God does kill children. God has a hand in the death of children. Because God has a hand in the death of everybody. But why is that in your children's book? Why
Because
have
it's
that
about
direct,
faith and children's relationship with God.
Why have that direct threat? I know, I just don't agree with it. I don't agree with it. I really did not want to jump into this right away, because I have a complicated history of the Christian religion, but, and like most branches of it, but whatever.
It's an interesting book for what it does, and I think that it's interesting that it goes to these places, offensive though they may be to, depending on your taste and feelings in relationship with these broader concepts. I still think that it's fascinating that they go to these places in ways that even in the like broader landscape of Christian media for children, it doesn't really get brought up much. Because
Wait, what Christian children media are you talking about? Because that's how I found out I'm a bastard.
I mean, most Christians' children media, at least contemporarily, I'm not sure what you were going to, don't really deal with the whole God is sort of like dangerous element and like the motives to maintain, certain defenses they make in favor of faith as a concept are a lot more like explicit than like the very baldlerized rest of like Christian like pop culture media today.
Yeah.
I'm mainly talking about things like VeggieTales and the endless ilk of ripoff not VeggieTales that exist out there, but also I don't know like Your Story Hour, and I guess that's kind of niche. Very location specific, but
I mean,
children's Bible story, radio stories, or faith comics, small like magazines they hand out in churches, stuff like that. That particular element of the subject matter is not sort of where it goes. I think that's sort of what makes Lewis's work stand out among media. I mean, probably as a side effect of like his age and like where he came from in terms of time period, but also his specific relationship with Christianity, being like a former atheist himself. It really, I think, positions him and makes him feel very obligated to stand sort of on the line there, to like go to like right the edge of like the purview of acceptable topics of Christianity and be like, no, we can talk about this. Let's defend this. Let's make a point of this. Let's talk about this for the kids. Which I think is kind of admirable, even if ultimately I think that the arguments he chooses are just a bit too infantilized to be of any worthwhile use to kids after they're small children.
If you want to talk about arguments he uses, he chose the wrong one at the end of this. I don't know if that end scene in this movie is the same as in the book. I'm not going to pretend like I know. I didn't read the book for a reason. Several reasons. Puddleglum Puddleglum was so
We
great
want to get
throughout
into
this
this
whole
now.
movie. Yes, we're getting into this now because you brought up the theology part first. We're gonna get into this now, fucker. Listen, Puddleglum.
I I wash my hands of this. You were the one that started off being like, if God's physical, he's going to be a jerk.
He's gonna come off as
That
a
demanded
jerk.
inquisition.
He's going to come off as a jerk if you ever put him physically in something. If you ever put a physical manifestation of him or her in something, they're always gonna come off as an asshole to outsiders. That's just how that's
no
gonna
more than
happen.
I've still not gotten a sufficient answer, I feel, as to why it's the physical manifestation that changes that and not just like God's general attitude. Like what is it about him being them being ineffable and good omens that keeps it from seeming like a jerk, and then the physical manifestation that
Because there's
makes
a
the
distance.
change?
Because there's a distance. Because you don't have to actively think about them. Ergo, when it's all said and done and it's over, if you don't have to actually think about them and their inaction, then it doesn't really have to change your view on them. But when you put the physical manifestation there, you make them a character in the story, and you have the characters, and not just the characters, but readers or consumers directly interact with them, then that is what turns them into an asshole, because they've shown that they're willing to physically manifest, and they're shown that they're willing to do some stuff to help, but they're reluctant to help in other places that, hey, this could really be better if you just, like, lifted a finger, which makes them more of an asshole to the people consuming it, especially those who are not part of the religion. That's my point. It's easier to ignore their inaction when they aren't physically ever presented.
It's perception then. Like, we mutually acknowledge that the same level of jerkery is happening either way.
Yeah, no, I'm not trying to say it's not. I'm just saying it's easier for your consumers to ignore when it isn't presented right in front of them. Unless you introduce a god like Marvel does with the Norse gods and then basically makes them not god, but like godlike. So they're there, but they have restrictions on their abilities and power levels.
It's definitely interesting, and it's an element that that's sort of like incorporating that and addressing that specifically seems like something, frankly, that I think Lewis would do. But now that I think about it, I don't think that's a theme. Certainly, it's not one that gets kind of addressed here. It's just sort of taken as par for the course, which I suppose it is at this point. This book being book number 4, I guess, in the series.
It's absolutely not addressed at all.
It's definitely
not in this movie, at least.
I wouldn't be surprised. I can't remember if that's an element that ever gets addressed, like whether or not. I think they just take it as part of like Aslan being Aslan, God being God, being ineffable,
and then he's being an asshole.
Potato, potato.
Yeah, so that's my issue with it. When you have the physical manifestation of God in your story, there's gonna be issues with how people perceive that character. It's the same with like how people perceive fucking Dumbledore. And yeah, J.K. Rowling's writing is okay. Harry Potter books are really good, but there's a lot of issues in them. I'm not defending them. But specifically, the way people perceive Dumbledore has changed as the people who grew up reading the books has changed. And it's like, Dumbledore knew all this and could have done something, but he literally didn't and kept it all secrets, and that's why half the issues that have arisen. So now you have people who like were really big fans of Dumbledore when they were kids and kind of hate him now, which is fair when you look at their points. It's the same thing when you have God in the story, or any character could have snapped their fingers and fixed something, and then they didn't.
Which I guess raises the question, is the reason I've sort of been able to accept the frizzling is what I call it. That sort of Miss Frizzle type behavior where everything seems like it's going wrong, but really you're in control the whole time. I mean, there's sort of there's a movement to like be against that sort of character whenever it arises. I think that if it was reality, certainly I'd be upset, but this is fiction and I can sort of accept a character that like knows things are in control and is wants to send these characters on a journey that they know they'll like benefit from having gone on.
Okay,
Because
yes.
that's really the whole point of it, either way, right? Like
And
the journey, either an episode of, Magic School Bus or this long book, it just,
don't misunderstand
go
me.
on this journey, learn some stuff, be better by the end.
Don't misunderstand me. I'm not always against that type of character. I feel like Dumbledore doing that, Dumbledore having kept a lot of that stuff from Harry, kept the story interesting. I feel like there are a lot of instances where a character like that is necessary. But when you make that character God, don't get mad when people are like, hey, God kind of sucks. Don't get mad about it then. That's my thing. I have nothing against that specific type of character. Those characters are usually really interesting to me. I still find Dumbledore really interesting. There's a character in Supernatural who does that, who I find super interesting. One of my favorite characters of the whole fucking series. But when you make it God, people are gonna be like, well, your God's an asshole then. And you shouldn't get mad about it. You shouldn't get mad about it. And Puddleglum
Oh man.
uses such a great argument at the end of this movie in favor of faith.
We can take this as a pausing moment. We've been ranting about faith for about 40 minutes now. Surely we can step away to have some fun time with the fantasy adventure story that this movie is, on the surface at least.
You keep cutting me off when I'm getting to this point, and I'm going to go ahead and go through with it because you keep cutting me off at it, and I refuse because I will forget to talk about it. We will get to all the fun stuff after.
No, you won't.
You brought it up soon. I will, though, because I did not want to talk about this.
Boy.
But Puddleglum is a really interesting, fun character throughout the whole thing. He has a very interesting character arc, which I can't wait to discuss because I want to discuss his character arc. The culmination of that character arc comes to a head when Puddleglum, who is a pessimist but considered an optimist by his people who are all more pessimistic than him that we never see, is when he's going against the queen and she's trying to gaslight everybody into believing that the other world the kids are from doesn't exist and the top land doesn't exist. And how Narnia never existed. She's trying to gaslight all of them. She's using power to do it. Magic power, green lights to do it. Green fire in the middle of the room, too. And slowly but surely, everyone's succumbing to it. Because, gaslighting. It typically works, and it's shitty. Not Puddleglum. Puddleglum doesn't give up. He doesn't renounce his faith. Because he knows, even if that world never existed, he'll still believe that it did because it's better than the reality in front of him that it never existed. Which he's correct to do in this instance because it did exist. And there's something to be said about people believing that a world can get better as long as they keep working together to make it better. But that's not what's going on here. What's going on here is he's decided to completely deny what is right in front of him, to believe in a dream that he now believes was entirely fake and a complete dream, but he doesn't like her, so he's going to believe in it out of spite and still try to escape. And he is correct to do that in this instance because Narnia does exist. The other world does exist. That is what gets them all out and away from the evil queen. That was the right move. But that's such a bad argument for faith. I'm going to believe in something that I dreamed despite all evidence of reality in front of me is what someone who is just completely illusioned would do. And typically, if people are denying reality in front of them because they think their dreamland is more real, they would need to get help or have a therapist to talk to it about at the very least. There are entire movie concepts based on, hey, I can't tell reality apart from what I dream. And those people have some serious issues, but Puddleglum is rewarded for it in this. And
it's definitely...
It's a bad argument. It's a bad argument for faith.
It's definitely a big hiccup on C.S. Lewis's part as somebody that was atheist, then came back to faith. His big argument being, well, if you look at the world around you, it sucks, so let's pretend that it's a better one.
That's and again, if you're religious, you're religious. If you believe in something, you believe in something. But that only worked in this one very specific, extra complicated moment he set up. It would not work in any other way. In any other way would it be rewarded. Except for the author set it up to be rewarded.
I mean, that is the point of allegory.
Oh my god, I know! I get what an allegory is. Stop brushing off everything that annoys me as if, well, that's the point of allegory. It's a bad allegory! It's a bad one! It's not.
It is.
It's.
Well, the point is,
Okay, Noah, what would you like to say?
what it is. You're right. You're totally right. The point he's making is bad. The allegory constructs an argument that is insufficient for the task at hand that he's trying to accomplish, which is try and find a reason for faith at the end of this story. Uh, and it does a bad job. I mean, I have a kind of a personal relationship with this particular line, when I was sort of questioning faith in like, mid high school, that there was a while there when I was really, wanted to believe but didn't really, like that, spark of like being able to look at the world and see it as having, existing with some element of the divine just
To,
it was gone, and I was trying to find some reason to continue carrying on. So I tried to cling on to this line, the idea like, well, it's either there is God or there isn't, and death is permanent and nothing means anything. So let's pretend that there is a God and be happy about it. And that didn't last long.
okay. And I also went through something similar because despite how antagonistic I am coming off as towards religion, especially the Christian religion right now, I was very religious as a child. I did everything besides getting baptized. That was the only thing. I drew a line. I didn't do it. My mom had very like loose rules. Find religion if you want to find religion, but baptism and like some other religious like final steps to actually being inducted in were not allowed until you were 18 because she did not believe in children participating in those. And thank goodness, because I definitely bought into that shit as a kid. But I had that same moment where it's either this exists or there's no magic in the world at all. And I had already, like, kind of decided there could be a God, but there wasn't a Christian God. And there could be a God, but it wasn't going to be, like, a Wiccan God or even, like, Judaism or Islam. It wasn't going to be any major religion. It was, there's a God and everybody doesn't get it because they can't stop arguing over it. Or there wasn't one at all. And what settled it for me was Santa Claus.
Ah, boy.
Oh
Why
my
didn't we do the
God.
Polar Express?
Oh my God.
Want to talk
No.
about discussions of faith that actually go well? Polar Express.
Yeah, no. But like, Santa Claus was the final line for me, and then 3 years after I discovered Santa didn't exist, I decided God didn't exist either. Because Santa was like the last thing I believed in that was magical, and either this exists and there is some magic in the world and there are something that could be considered miracles, or it's all chaos and that's just what it is. And then I found out Santa Claus didn't exist and magic died.
I mean, you'd have to be pretty young for that to be the clincher.
Nope. No. I wasn't at all.
How old were you when you found out Santa wasn't real?
Let's not talk
If you
about
want to
it.
share, you want to DM me the number so I can just like
Um,
react. You could just like,
I was a teenager.
wow, I didn't think that was feasible, like at all. Like, how
So
does one manage the logistics of that? Other people have to be involved in that kind of clandestine operation for
when
that to last that long.
listen, when I
Also, you have to not be in like any school.
I was the eldest out of 7 kids. I was the first one to find out Santa didn't exist. And then slowly but surely, everyone else found out right after me. My mom was so happy she kept up the charade for so long because it meant like her youngest kids didn't have to discover it. I was either 13 going on 14 or I was 12 going on 13. And I told everybody Santa Claus had to exist because I did believe I actually saw him once. And I clung to that memory when it was really my grandfather walking through the middle of the house to make sure everything was set up right. And I saw his boot that he wore in the middle of winter. And I was like, there's no reason why anyone else in the house would be wearing boots in the middle of the night. And it was really him. My great-grandfather accidentally caused me to believe in Santa Claus until I was a teenager. I mean, he's a big influence on me. Well, he was a big influence on me in every aspect of my life. So, like, yeah, no. I clung to that memory and told everybody else that they had to be wrong. And then I just stopped talking about it and silently believed. Till magic died for me in the world one night.
So I can see why relationships with faith would be so lively.
No, that's not why my relationships with faith is so lively. And everybody assumes that it's just because of the Santa Claus thing, but it's not. I have trouble believing in other people, like organized religion, for a multitude of reasons. One of those being because of the way I grew up in the household I grew up. Everybody had a different faith, and whenever faith was discussed, they either had civil conversations about it and came to agreement that they disagreed on certain aspects, or it was a fight, and certain people refused to talk to others about their ideologies because they had to be wrong because only their God was right. Those were the two kind of conversations of faith that happened in my house. And I very much lean towards the, hey, let's have an active discussion about why some of us believe some things and not others. I came to the conclusion that God created the Big Bang and left science in charge after that and stayed hands off after when I was a kid and was searching for faith. That is what I believed in for a very long time. Other people either found out about that and was like, okay, well, let's have discussions about why. Or they found out about it and told me I was blasphemous, that the 7 churches I went to must have all worshipped Satan instead of God, because I went to 7 different churches in my lifetime, plus the synagogue, trying to find faith.
That's a thorough search.
All of them different branches of Christianity, too. Well, 2 were the same, and then there was another pair that was the same, but the rest, so like there was like 5 or 4 in total different branches of Christianity I actually went to, plus the synagogue. Like, I tried, and I did thorough research, and I was actively seeking out faith. And when Santa died, I realized, oh, the magical aspects everybody attributes to faith cannot exist. But maybe there are other things about it that still existed. And I still kept trying to find God after that for 3 more years. That's when I stopped. It didn't completely end all be all with that. But I was saying how the Santa thing was kind of similar to an experience I had compared to your religious journey. But no, like, my problem with faith is that whenever you look at it, you've got 2 kind of people who interact with you. And both of them have flaws. Both of them have faults. And I just don't believe anymore. And I don't have the patience to deal with people that are going to be like, it's either this way or it's no way. Like, the 2 biggest influences in my life were my great-grandparents. They were both Christians. They were both, you practice at your house. You don't go to a church and worship. You practice in the way that makes you feel comfortable and closer to God. And you don't push it on other people. That's how so many different religions were able to prosper in my family, thanks to them. Because they did not force their shit on everybody else. And that's literally the only kind of people who are religious who I can really get along with now. And that's just how it is. I don't like stuff like C.S. Lewis's writing, where it's forced onto the characters and in front of everybody's faces. And it's either this or you're fucking crazy because the book says you're crazy, or you're the bad guy. And it doesn't help that I'm a woman, and most of the time the women in these stories are either villains or they're fucking children who haven't realized they needed to become women yet.
That is a massive problem with just this in general, C.S. Lewis in particular.
So yeah, I don't enjoy the C.S. Lewis
Shout out to
books.
Susan. Got done dirty.
I didn't really enjoy this movie. But Puddleglum was really great until that last soapbox moment.
Puddleglum was fun. I
Puddleglum
still
was
think
so much
Puddleglum is the
fun.
shining star of this movie. And this is a movie with Warwick Davis as an owl, so that's
I
saying a
know!
lot.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so if anybody else has ever seen God damn it. Never Ending Story. If anyone else has ever seen the Never Ending Story movies, the owl that Warwick plays in this movie has the same kind of face mask that the owl in Never Ending Story has. They even got like similar effects that get laid over them sometimes when they're moving around. It's so cool. It looks straight up, and they're both kind of cowards. Like, not Warwick's not as big of a coward as the Neverending Story guy was, but they're both kind of like that, and they're both only there to help the main characters occasionally and then disappear and stay gone. That was great. Puddleglum's whole thing about how he's too much of an optimist, so he's going to go on this harrowing journey to bring himself down to the same pessimistic levels as the rest of his people was amazing. I loved it. I love every moment, because anytime things are going good, he doesn't believe they're going good, and he's a big old pessimist. And every time things are going shitty and the kids are all down and they're in the dirt and they're like, this sucks, he's like, but wait, it'll get better, everybody. This will be a good thing. And I love it. I love that. That's what made me like his character. It's such an interesting character journey. Oh, and like, he doesn't really change throughout. In the movie, at least, he doesn't really change throughout. You would agree with that, right, Noah?
Yeah, it's more a revelation of the character that exists than a
Yes.
arc of change.
And if you pay attention, you notice it really early on, because when it's a really sunny day, he's sad, but when like things are going bad, he's always happy. And not because things are going bad he's happy, but because he's trying to help keep the kids positive. And those are the moments you can really notice, oh, this is what his people mean by he's not a big enough pessimist. And it's so great, and it's so adorable. And I thought his character arc was going to go to him realizing that, and the children realizing that, because they always are mad at him for being so down in the fucking gutter all the time. So down in the dumps all the time. And I thought it was just going to be like, oh, we were wrong. You actually do keep us motivated, and you actually have moments where you believe things will get better. And I thought it was just going to be all three of them realizing that and accepting that as part of him, so it doesn't matter what his people think. But no. That's not... didn't end in that revelation. It ended in the dream instead of seeing reality one.
I mean, there is an end to the sort of him being a pessimist arc. When they're walking away and they're saying goodbye, they're like, "You're not. I'm sorry I said you were a wet blanket. You're actually, the bravest, most bright fellow ever," which is true.
Which is
But
true.
which is absolutely true. But you're right. It doesn't really capture the full of his character and how he should, moving forward, relate himself to the other Marshwiggles who thinks he's so flighty and cheerful.
Yeah.
Even though he's introduced saying, "Oh man, is it a famine? Is it a plague? Why are you waking me up? It's fire, isn't it? Dragons, yes? It's all gone horrible." It's such a great introduction. And that's before you recognize Tom Baker, because it's all in the dark and we don't get to see him and we don't know what a Marshwiggle is yet. For future reference, a Marshwiggle is like a human frog person.
If you read the George R. R. Martin books, it's like the Cronon people. But yeah.
I'll be playing a Marshwiggle in all my future fantasy role-playing games. That's really what this movie is. This is like a bunch of like church kids at like a Sabbath camp.
They're trying to play Dungeons and Dragons without getting in trouble.
Yeah, and like
I've been there.
like the ex-atheist counselor, what's the word for a youth leader in church? The youth leader is playing Puddleglum. The DM is like the one adult in the room, and he's playing Aslan as a self-insert. It's all work out your own headcanon. I'd rather not talk about D&D at all. But this has always been my platonic ideal of a D&D campaign, this movie. What? Lord of the Rings? Never heard of her. This movie.
To be fair,
It's so wonderfully episodic.
To be fair, I watched a video talking about how Aragorn is actually the ideal character setup for a ranger, and I love the idea now. There's no rangers in this movie. Oh my god, the girl doesn't even get magical healing powers. She doesn't get a weapon. The guys each get a sword and a set of bow and arrows each. And then Puddleglum has a fucking staff. And she gets a knife. She gets a knife that's this fucking big. So if anybody gets too close to this 10-year-old, what the fuck is she supposed to do with the knife? Yeah, she can stab someone, but she's not tall enough to reach anywhere that's actually gonna fucking, like, get someone to back off of her. Oh my god!
It's not a combat-heavy adventure.
This is more like... Thank goodness! I really thought she was gonna get kidnapped. Like, for half of this, I thought she was gonna get kidnapped because she didn't have a weapon. Oh, I was so scared for her.
It's pretty combat light. Like there's one fight in the whole movie, isn't there?
Yeah, because the dragon doesn't even get fought.
Yeah, because like the first like little episode they have is they're just walking along and then a dragon shows up and just puffing like vaping hard fat clouds in front of them. They're like, whoa, dragon, that's scary. And Eustace is like, hey, I'll go talk to him. I was a dragon in the last movie.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
I've got a thing. They use the same dragon costume puppet to play this dragon. Don't worry, I've got to figure out. He goes off, talks to it, it flies off. It's excellent. That's the thing. This makes me want to write like a fantasy role-playing game where it isn't, I know there are a million of them. I get it. There's a whole army of them, but I would like to take my own hand at like, I was talking about what we were watching. A role-playing game where the focus is on, staying warm and comfortable, talking through and working out like the big issues that you have, trying not to stab each other because of how much you hate the other members of your group, and like making the food. That's the real adventuring that I care about. I don't care about tactics. I don't care about sidestepping and attacks of opportunity. That's trash. That's for losers that don't care about story.
Me every time.
Tell me
I
about
play
how
D&D.
cold it is.
Literally me.
Tell me about how dry and stale the food is. Tell me
time.
who's got the annoying nose whistle that I get mad about 3 weeks into it and try to kill them over.
Honestly, that's why I love role-playing games, for the role-playing moments. I don't give a fuck about the fighting, especially in D&D.
That's why D&D is a bad role-playing game and people shouldn't make it their introduction.
I don't care. Well, Pathfinder was my introduction. It was a superhero.
D&D with the serial numbers filed off.
It was a superhero Pathfinder game, and it was mostly the characters attacking each other. I was in high school. I played.
I know it's not your fault. I'm not mad at you. I'm mad at role-playing game culture and how like horribly marred it's been by D&D being the most popular one. I've told you before. It's like what if Transformers 4 was the only movie people knew about?
You wanna know what
it's bizarre.
So I actually also have a headcanon about this series about this movie that I think would make it better, and it's Aslan one because fuck him. And I'm not saying fuck God, but fuck Aslan, specifically that fictional god. Listen.
Let's trash Aslan. This is a trash Aslan cast now. Welcome to the pod. We hate lions that are God.
We hate lions that are God. We hate abusive father figures who are shitty, toxic masculinity representatives. We hate other characters too. They're both kind of toxic masculine figures, yeah. But no, okay,
Whoops.
So like, what if Aslan isn't the person that actually controls when the children can come and go from Narnia? I'm throwing this out here. There's gonna be so much evidence from the books where like that's obviously not true. I don't give a fuck. Look at the movies. The movies, if you watch the few movies I've seen,
the BBC made for TV movies.
I haven't seen all the BBC ones, but in this BBC one specifically, they only get to Narnia because Eustace is talking about Narnia and they're running from bullies, and he wants to go to Narnia because that's where they'll be safe. Also, he totally pretended to be hiding from the bullies as well when really he just wanted to talk to the girl. That's all that was. He wanted to touch her shoulder without getting punched, and that was the situation that arose. Prove me wrong, you can't. Point of the matter is, he's like, we should go to Narnia. We can hide there. So then they go to Narnia because he says it. They think about it. They open the door. It's there. It's not Aslan. Like, if you look at the other stories, it's not Aslan who, like, pulls them through the fucking cupboard in the movie. It's the little girl wanting to escape, and then she finds a door to a different world. It's that. So what if all the power is actually in the children and not in God himself? And that's why he can't help on the journeys or shit, because all his power comes from their belief in him, which is why he introduces himself as the good guy who's here to help. Because if they believe in him, then he can manipulate them and have them to use their powers to spread his religion over the world in Narnia. And that's my headcanon. And I don't give a fuck if it's not true at all.
If you're sitting on writing a Narnia fanfiction and it's just the Christian stuff that's getting in your way, there's the key.
Aslan's a false god. Aslan's a false god.
Just inject that right in there.
Just fucking take him out.
Squeeze that one into the hypodermic, jam it into your fic.
Oh, I really...
Squirt it up. Take the god right out.
Or, like, even just make him a false god. If you're still religious and you want to include God, just say Aslan's not the real one. And limit his powers, and then fuck with him. Because fuck him!
You're just gonna go... I see you now. 1 hour from now, the stream's over. We've had our little endgame chat. You're going to be sitting down and just on a loop in a dark room. You're going to be on your phone and you're going to be watching like the high quality Disney CGI scene of where he's tortured and shorn by a bunch of, you know,
oh shit, that does happen!
I forgot by a bunch of like scene. Horrifying Renaissance looking demons. You're just gonna watch that over and over. You're gonna be like, oh, and then this is the part where Tilda Swinton stabs him and makes fun of him. You're just gonna like play that on a loop, and you're just gonna like have the most maniacal gargoyle-esque grin on your face. You're gonna be like, yes, burn lion.
So I'm actually not going to do that because I don't care enough to do that. But I forgot that was a scene. I forgot that happened.
Yes,
Fuck yeah!
yes.
Go Tilda Swinton.
Tilda Swinton in a mountain of CGI beat up a lion.
Oh my gosh. Like, it's literally, the witches and the lion are just different religions that are vying for power, and they're different religious figures trying to get the most followers. And Aslan just so happens to have magical children to help him, and all the power is really in their hands, and he can't say shit about it. He just wants them gone so he can start controlling the land that they gave him. Fuck him. That's my headcanon. That's where I'm at. I don't care about how the context was originally supposed to be. Puddleglum would be better if he had actually said like something along the lines of, well, even if it doesn't exist, we still have to go and see. Or being like him just telling the children that it's okay, that this journey wasn't pointless, that they did good. And then the children standing up to the witch, and the children getting themselves out because they were the ones sent on the adventure anyways. Although you gotta love responsible adults in fantasy. He literally...
Oh yeah, and he's the most.
Yeah, no, he literally does the most out of all responsible adults in fantasy. He tries to protect the kids. He's always there to support them. He never once ditches their asses, except for when they sleep in different rooms. That's it. He's very respectful of their privacy and lets them make the decisions they want to make, and then he follows through, and he's there to support them. Puddleglum is the best character. He's the best adult in like a children's fantasy adventure ever. Fight me on that. We stand Puddleglum.
Oh yeah.
We don't stand Aslan's. We don't stand Aslan's final stupid argument.
Oh man,
they're just so many
excellent. There's so many excellent Puddleglum moments. Like there's the one where he looks at the camera and he just says, "That's bad," and we're gonna be playing constantly throughout this whole podcast. That's the sound you've been hearing. It's just Puddleglum saying, Tom Baker going to the camera and be like, "That's bad. That's not good." Whatever he says, it's excellent. There's like the scene when they're traveling, because so much of this is traveling, because it's a 3-hour fantasy movie, and of course there's a lot of walking.
And they don't even talk during the walking.
I think that he's bringing his entire wigwam with him, because that's what marsh wiggles like live in. They live on marshlands with wigwams. Cool. Don't see those in fantasy often. They're in the wigwam. They're very cold. Like Eustace and Jill are sitting back to back, and he's like, "We'll sit back to back to stay warm." And Jill's like, "Hey, whose back will you sit against?" And he's just standing there. "I'll sit
What?
against my own."
He's literally standing against the wall and lets the children like use his overcoat as a blanket. Like they sleep against his legs,
Uh,
against each other's backs, and he just covers them up with his like overcoat.
mhm.
And it's adorable. He's like, "Don't you worry. I will look like I'm standing guard." And he's the first one out. He's not even trying to stand guard. He's out. I rely on
He
myself.
does that like
Sleeps.
he's like that full J. Jonah Jameson thing where he seems kind of acerbic, or at least in his case, really depressing. But the reality is he'd lay down his life for anyone. And he does that
Yeah.
explicitly. Like at the end, Prince Brilliant is under a million kinds of magic.
Yeah.
So he like threatens Eustace when they first meet him. He's like, "I run you through, boy." And then, and you know,
Puddleglum
Puddleglum's
steps
like,
up
"He's
to
only a
the
kid." And
plate.
then he's only a kid. And then Brilliant's like, "You want to go?" And he's like, "No, I don't particularly want to die. But if it's me or a kid,
Kill me. You're
yeah,
no. He literally says
kill
something.
me."
He literally points out how he's not a real man if he's going to kill an unarmed boy, despite the fact that Eustace isn't unarmed, unless they all took away their weapons and we just didn't see that. But yeah, no, Puddleglum's the best. When the prince is strapped down in the silver chair, which is the whole point of the movie, it's the title, whatever. Anyways, when he's strapped
It's the
down in
brainwashing magic chair.
yeah, when he's strapped down in that chair, kinky by the way. Um, he literally tries to attack them for not releasing him because he's only lucid when he's in the chair at night. But his brainwashed self says he's only lucid when he's not in the chair, and he goes through like super craziness in the middle of the night. And so he's like yelling at them, trying to like get them to tear him free, but he's not saying Aslan's name, so they aren't doing shit. They're terrified of him because he's really violent and angry right now, which reasonable, really reasonable to be scared of that. Like maybe don't be like that if you want to get set free. The prince is stupid, but he tries to grab them, and Puddleglum's like, "Come here, children," and he brings them into a huge hug, and they all stare at the prince together as he goes on this really long monologue about how horrible they are because they aren't helping him, and how terrible they are for Narnia because they're not helping him. And Puddleglum is just staring like, yeah, no, the children aren't coming near you. And it's of course after like Jill gets grabbed and then she gets released and then they get into the huddle. But like, yeah, no, it's adorable. I love it. I love how he's so quick to like say, I wasn't drunk, but maybe these giants don't mean us harm. And then they start getting too friendly and they're like, "Oh no, maybe they do mean us harm, children." But he still lets them figure
Turns
it
out
all out. It's amazing. I love him. My favorite
it's
responsible
very
adult.
interesting, and it talk about like a different sort of character in these children's adventures. Like we've been talking about the Frizzle, the Gandalf, the Dumbledore.
Yeah.
The person that is sort of godlike, is in charge, knows what's going on, and is putting them through these trials as a lesson. Here's how you're gonna learn a story through this. And change for the better by going through this experience that has been set up for you, or has it? Who knows? It's a little inevitable. Whatever. The corollary of like a supportive adult that is still like letting the children have an adventure, like a weird in between genuinely responsible, which would be like, "Hey, you're children, you're not going on an adventure," and "No, I've set up an elaborate crazy scheme and you're all going on a field trip." Puddleglum is the perfect center because he's here to support them on the adventure.
Yeah.
That's why he's there. That's why Warwick Davis Owl and his barn owl buddy fly them over there. You're gonna hang out. We're gonna talk. You guys are going north. You need somebody that knows the Northlands. That's the Marshwiggles. We'll go to Puddleglum. Puddleglum will help you out. And he's like, "Okay,
Puddleglum's
I'm
been
gonna be your
looking for an
guide.
adventure.
Obviously, I'm going with you because yeah, you need a guide, and also I'm an adult. You need an
Yeah.
adult." But he's not. But he also knows that it's their adventure they're going on. So he lets, like you're saying, he lets them figure the things out. He lets, it's not like he's not making it. Well, it's not like he's not making an effort, and it's not like he knows what's going to happen. He's not doing the frizzle. He
Yeah.
doesn't know either. But he's also like treating them as like equal partakers in this adventure.
Yeah.
He's not like babysitting them there. They're all going as a party of equals. He's just there sort of as like the friendly chaperone.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what he is. He's that friend you call when you want to get drunk but you need someone to be responsible. He's that guy. That is exactly who Puddleglum is. He's not going to stop you from having fun, but he's going to make sure you get home at the end of the night. And that's exactly what he does. He makes sure they get home. They get right back to Narnia thanks to him.
Designated driver Puddleglum. Oh man, we stand Puddleglum so hard.
We stand Puddleglum. He made a mistake because that was a really bad argument, but everything else about him, yes, all the way. He's also not like secretly.
Man,
He's also not secretly like. So there's a lot of instances where they say other people are pagans and like how they're not worthy of Aslan's kingdom because they don't believe in Aslan or what the fuck ever.
Well, they don't say it. It's just like subtext, but yes.
It's subtext, but it's very obvious there. He's not a dick to them. He's not a direct dick to them until they try and eat him. He doesn't care any other time. The only time he even like... This is a very religious story, but the only time Puddleglum gets super religious is that monologue at the very end. The rest of the time, he just wants to be more like how his people want him to be. He's trying to become a better person, and honestly, good for him. I stand
Those are extenuating
his journey.
circumstances at the end.
Those are extenuating
Like, there was a
circumstances.
magic witch woman was trying to convince him that his homeland didn't exist. Like, no wonder he'd be, like, fighting hard.
He literally burnt his hand. He shoved his hand into the green magic fire, and it turns orange because Aslan, orange for a second. And he burns his hand completely. And, like, his first thought is still, let's get the children out of here first. And I appreciate that. Oh, I love it.
He's excellent.
He's excellent. And I feel like if he wasn't in the story, Jill would have done a lot of the stuff he ends up doing.
Yeah.
Jill is really just given the task of memorization, and then she doesn't memorize anything. She was told to memorize, despite the fact you don't have to remember them word for word to get them done. But then she doesn't get to do anything else.
I mean, if it's any consolation, neither does Eustace. Like... Jill at least has, like, a task. Eustace is just kind of here.
Eustace is only here because he's been here before.
Yeah. He's like her guide.
He's her guide, and she's supposed to be the one doing stuff. But he gets all the cool things and gets to talk to people. And gets to be aggressive for no reason. And that was the right choice, because these are all the bad guys all along. And she's just like, hey, we don't know them. Maybe they can help us since we're lost? Maybe.
It's a time, and it's
foolish girl.
Like we've talked, it's from like relative to the rest of the Narnia stories for all of it's very much like it's not the one if you want to have like the kids be actively doing things. Not that they ever really do. It's a lot like the Narnia books are kind of outside of the magician's nephew and I guess the horse and his boy. It's a lot of it is prophecy or instruction driven sort of adventuring. Yeah. I guess it's really just this one and Witch in the Wardrobe that really lean into it the most, and The Last Battle too, I suppose. Although I can barely remember it because again, I don't think anybody's really read that one.
I don't even know what that is supposed to be. I honestly haven't heard of that one.
It's the last one. It's the Book of Revelation. You'd hate it. You'd hate it so bad. It's the worst. C.S. Lewis's sexism comes out the loudest in that one. It's so... Susan Pevensey was done dirty, and we'll never really forgive C.S. Lewis for that one. Anyway, suffice to say, this one is very much not, like... The children adventuring is not the driving of the plot. Not to say that the children aren't the driving element, because, like...
They are.
Like I said before, the big, like, adventuring issue is not physical violence, is not the giants that could eat them, it's not the giants that were throwing rocks at them, or the massive holes in bridges, or the floor, or the earth that they could fall through. The biggest issue is just, like, withstanding each other, and the weather, and, like, walking around. Because these are children that are being forced to walk all day, and they're gonna be aggravated, and it's cold, and they have no clothes to change into, and they have no way to bathe, and they're with a guy who's best like when Puddleglum is being an optimist, his optimism is saying, "Well, it could be worse." That's his
Yeah.
go-to like method of trying to cheer people up. Well, like this tastes like nothing good. It can't taste bad if it's bland. It's
Exactly. And I appreciate that.
like he's either a pessimist or he's that weird janky optimist that you have to like be look like you have to be like sensitive and not aggravated to like listen to and like appreciate.
Listen,
Like these children are already children and are in a bad mood to try and appreciate Puddleglum's excellence. So that's their
it truly is
contribution to the
excellent.
story is mainly being really and understandably frustrated with the position they're in, going on an adventure they can barely remember the instructions for, long
That Elia
roads, in
told
the
you to go
cold,
on after
underground
he
sometimes.
threatened to eat you.
Like it's a bad it's interesting, and I think that if you're a fan of fantasy stories, I think that's really the one that I think would should compel you to come watch us. It's not just the like hokey effects that sometimes do a really surprisingly good job. It's not just Puddleglum, who is excellent, and if you're a Doctor Who fan, as I understand it, you'll probably appreciate recognizing
Yeah.
the fourth Doctor. That's the scarf one, I guess.
That is.
Uh,
He's so much more than the scarfed one, but yeah, sure, the
the
scarfed
scarf one.
one. Oh gosh, my
The
camera fell
scarf one,
again.
the longest running Doctor ever, apparently, according to the wiki.
Yeah.
I think that what makes this stand out as a fantasy story is just that core of it, that like element that the hardest part of this journey is not the physical threats. It's not the Dark Lord that's gonna threaten them. It's not the million packs of orcs between them and who knows what. It's it's just the journey. It's the traveling. It's the
Okay,
learning to deal with each other's personalities,
you're right, and
and that's tasty.
it's so great, and I love it because I'm all here for character interactions. I wish they all could have
Hmm.
gotten more and had more to do, but
Oh yeah,
Puddleglum had plenty
some
to
arcs
do, so
maybe.
I'm happy. Puddleglum got to do what he got needed to do, and I'm happy with that. I'm happy with him, though I would have loved more for
Hmm.
the kids. Um, One last thing to talk about before we go today,
Yes, yes.
because we're
Before we
almost
get to
out
the
of
review,
time.
yes. Oh yeah, yeah. We're.
So Father Time is in this. I've been sitting on
Yes,
this
yes.
the whole time. Father Time is in this, and apparently
Yeah, he just shows up. He's just
apparently
here.
he's an old white dude with a giant beard who's a giant himself. So not surprising, but Father Time is in this. Apparently he fell in a hole a few years back, hit his head, and he's been asleep this whole time. So like big Narnia fans, big C.S. Lewis fans, question, is Father Time sleeping the reason why like Narnia's time and our time are completely fucking different? Is it because he's not awake and doing his job? Is it because everything is on autopilot because Father Time fucking went into a coma underground? That's my question. Noah, do you have any answer for that? Is there anything about him at all
Well,
in the books? Is this just a movie thing?
I know that Father Time makes an appearance in the last battle. That he gets mentioned as waking up and walking into the giant mirror that leads to Aslan's country, which is heaven. That's just what,
Yeah,
obviously.
cause and
But
there's a thing in the movie that says it's the end times when he wakes up.
yeah, hence the last battle.
Yeah.
So, what I think, let's talk about this scientifically. Okay, hypothesis. Travel to Narnia has funky time because of Father Time being asleep. So, how we test this hypothesis? We find another element of extra dimensional travel where we know Father Time isn't asleep, or not even a factor, uh, and see if we can't find other evidence of time being wonky. You read The Magician's Nephew, yes?
Yeah, I did quite a few years
That's
ago.
sort of like if Lion Witch in the Wardrobe is like Matthew, Mark, Luke, the books of the Bible that discuss Christ's death. The Magician's Nephew is Genesis. It talks about the start of Narnia. It's the first book that got written after Silver Chair. It's when he went back in time. It was like, okay, let's talk about where Narnia came from, where the White Witch showed up.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of extra dimensional happening in that one. You go to like Janus, aka the White Witch, aka Snake Lady, her original world, which I love. I
Oh yeah,
love the
that's right.
imagery. I
She is
love the
clearly
idea
the
of her
same
origin.
person.
I love how she's released. excellent. Just read the Magician's Nephew just for like that episode because it's very interesting. It's very compelling visually. I wish I was a painter because I would just spend a bunch of time painting the like bombed out, bizarre, esoteric, like array world that is hers. But I don't remember honestly if there's any time wonkiness during that original traveling they do before Narnia. I want to say that there is. My pet theory has always just been, oh, Father Time being asleep is just like it's just part of the big Narnia mythos. It doesn't really have anything to do with the passage of time. That's just a side effect of it being a different world. Of course, it would have its own time.
I mean, and I can get that because there's plenty of other examples in other media where like if you travel between worlds, there's going to be two different like time period. There's going to be like two different passages of time for them. I was willing to accept that answer, but why put Father Time in it if all he is an omen?
It's just there to be like add character to the world, I guess. But you're right. There's not really anything else there that does that.
It's just
I mean,
it's a nice idea where like there's actually some point to him being asleep
yeah.
and some point to him waking up. Besides, oh, this is the end of all times. I wish more things in this movie had a point. Like I really do.
I guess it's just sort of like the four elephants and the turtle under the Discworld that like Terry Pratchett wrote. Not that I ever read any book where that came up besides just mentioning that that was part of the metaphysics. It's just like, that's how this world works. It's just a part of it. It doesn't serve a point. That's just part of how the world... But I think I appreciate the way that you're, like you said, your headcanon tries to ascribe a function to this story because, you know, it's just a detail without any function. I don't know. I guess
relevant. I want more things to be relevant.
I don't know. I kind of like details that are kind of empty and have no point, but I know that that's not good storytelling because you're not telling a story, really.
But like,
I don't know.
Okay, so I can appreciate details that are just in there and don't really have a point to them. That can do a lot, even when there's not a direct point to them. Setting up characters, just them reacting to that can do a lot. But like... they don't even really react to his presence. They're just like, oh, well, let's not wake him up then, because we don't want the world to end. That's it. And then they keep going underground. He's just there.
Well, that's weird.
And if you're going to introduce something that's big, hey, this is a world-ending omen. Hey, this guy has been underground for years, and no one but apparently the underground people know he's down there, and probably Aslan, because Aslan's God and he's a dick. And, like, no one else, why is he there? If you're not going to let the characters
I wonder
react
if that's
to him
the point,
and show something, then why is he there?
I mean, he's part of that whole introductory long walk in the underground, like, because they go to the underworld again, and it's not hell, it's just, like, a cave system.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's just there to add character to the world, to give it, like, a sense of, like, imply the gravity of, like, the weight of this underworld. Like, this is a world, there are things here that are deep and dark and powerful, that have a connection to the world above. There's an interplay that goes on that's also mysterious, because nobody else knows about all this. There's, like... It just adds like that mysterious ambiance, I guess, is the main function, at least as it plays out here. But you're right, they could have done more with it.
And I don't mind. Okay, I know I complain about a lot on this podcast about a lot of the things you introduced me to.
Don't we all?
And I'm sorry. I don't mind when things are left ambiguous. I don't mind when there's not really a point to something. You just have it there because it's cool. But if it's just there because it's cool, have that influence the characters. Give them more than just oh no, let's not wake him up then. Have them mention him again and ask questions about him like I'm asking questions about him. Even if they don't find out, they could have asked Aslan, hey, are you aware that time is underground? Father Time is down there. And the answer would obviously be yes, because he's God, so why even ask? But like, as they go back to the other world together, they could be like, I wonder if Father Time's awake on our side, but asleep on that side. Anything. Didn't even need an answer. Just anything. So there's more of a point.
Any reaction at all?
Any reaction at all to a god? Any reaction at all to a god sleeping underground? Because Father Time basically is.
I'm sure we'll be talking about that one more. It's an interesting point. So we've gone over, which we do, I guess we just need to be scared of the clock more.
I have
Suffice to say,
I have 4 minutes left on my end, so I thought we had enough time. You
oh,
started
oh yeah,
earlier
because I
than
went
me.
over. I started early. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, with the time that we have left, which I guess is more so than I suspected, um, let's let's ask the big question. So now that you've caught it, as the title says, now that you did catch that, do you recommend it?
If you're a religious person and you like fantasy, you're going to enjoy this. So I would recommend it to you. If you're not a religious person, you hate heavy-handed metaphors and allegories that are there to serve one particular purpose and they're not going to convince you of the arguments they used, you probably won't enjoy it. If you're a fan of Tom Baker, you're going to enjoy it just for Tom Baker.
Oh
I
yeah. Oh
literally
yeah.
got up and screamed in my room so loudly, people came and checked up on me because Tom Baker. But, like, depends. It's a selective taste. I wouldn't recommend the movie or the plot, but, like, I would watch it again just for the Tom Baker parts and the Warwick
Oh yeah.
parts. Really just them.
It's it.
I think this is the first one. I think this is the first one I wouldn't recommend unless you're a very specific type of person.
It was just a lot at the end there, sort of to take in, unless you're willing to be forgiving of a certain kind of thing.
And again, I just want to say I'm not against religious people. Believe what you want to believe. I don't care. Just don't come at me with it. You're not going to convince
No,
me.
I'm not going to say that. I think we both need to be opposite arguments, opposite sides of every argument. I think that religion is dumb. Everybody, let go of your religion. We're all done. Religion's over. It had a nice run. It was a nice shot. It's done. Religion is canceled now. Now everybody instead spends all their free time. We're gonna be doing macrame. I don't know what macrame is, but we're gonna get our macrame stuff out. Put your Bibles away. We don't need them. I put 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 your Jewish
I
Bibles
feel
away.
like
Put
Torahs? You
put
mean
whatever
Torahs?
Muhammad wrote away.
You
Put
mean
it away.
Torahs?
Put it all away. Put it all
Your
away.
Jewish
Put
Bibles?
I'm sure. Put the sutras away. You don't need those anymore. Macrame is all that you need now. It's just macrame is gonna fill that little bit of
Okay.
hobby time that the world's gonna have now.
Okay.
It's all over. It was a nice. It was a nice run while it lasted, but nah,
I feel
macrame
like-
time now.
I feel like you always go to the extreme while I'm always, yeah, I didn't like this, or this. But hey, do what you're gonna do. And you're always like, nah, fuck that. I'll defend that stuff, but fuck your opinion. You always do that. By the way, just gonna end on this fantastic comment from somebody in my stream.
Oh.
No religion, more communism.
That's really what we need here. That we didn't even get to the whole like
Oh my God, we did
theocracy
it.
like.
Whoa, no, we did not.
We'll
That would
get
be a long
monarchy eventually.
conversation.
Don't worry about it. We'll get there, kids. Oh my goodness. Suffice it to say, I've been Noah.
And I've been Tiger Eyes 45.
And you all finally caught the silver chair.
Or our interpretation of it.
Or our interpretation of it. Same diff. Who cares? See you all next week, people. Have a lovely evening.
Later.
Thank you for watching the video. If you liked our discussions on the BBC's The Silver Chair, please subscribe to support our channel. Likes are wonderful and greatly appreciated too. If you want to see these episodes get made before they go up on YouTube and Spotify, you can find links to our Twitch channels in the description below. We record the episodes on both channels at 9 p.m. EST on Tuesday nights. So, what did you guys think about The Silver Chair?